Welcome to the Spike Camp podcast. Spike Camp is a free online community for hunters that support conservation. It's a great place to share stories and your experience with other hunters. As a member of Spike Camp, you get access to all of our hunting live streams, discussion channels, contests, hunter resources, and events that we host. Membership to Spike Camp is free. Our only ask is that you are a member of a hunting or conservation group before you register. Head over to spikecamp.com to join us. This episode of the Spike Camp podcast is brought to you in part by Precision Optics. Omer and his team are the ones to trust when it comes to mountain hunting gear, guns, and optics. Precision Optics is a major supporter of conservation, and we are proud to partner with them. Head over to precisionoptics.net and tell them that Spike Camp sent you.
All right, welcome everybody to the fourth and final episode of Sheep Camp 2024. We want to give a special shout out to Rydell from Asiac Equipment for donating an ultralight stability system for glassing. It's the backcountry light tripod and head plus a bino to tripod adapter system called the Bino Clamp. It's super cool gear. Blake and I are going to run it this fall. And at the end of tonight's show, we will be drawing the winner. And if that wasn't enough for you guys, we got a special bonus draw tonight. Our buddy Alec from Ape Equipment has donated a pair of his custom-made Silverback Ultra Gators and a hat that we're going to draw at the end of the show as well. I just got my set a couple weeks ago, and these things are bulletproof. You're going to love them. We're going to hook the winner up with Alec right after the show so you can get your order in, and he'll get you sized up and custom fit. So tonight's guest is our good buddy, Kevin Willis. Kevin's been a big influence and a mentor for Blake and I on our journey as sheep hunters. So welcome back, Kev. It's a pleasure to have you on again, buddy.
Thanks, pal. Good to see you.
Right on. So last time we did this show, Kevin was in his house, and he has a challenge with cell service and internet deep in the valleys of Mission over there. So
Wi-Fi challenge for sure.
Wi-Fi challenge, yeah. So we thought we would try a live and in-person Spike Camp studio in my basement here. So we're going to give it a rip tonight. So bear with us. If we have communication breakdown, we've got an emergency plan B. We've got a laptop and a headset in a bedroom on the third floor. So you can have to run up there and reboot. So we're hoping that doesn't happen, but that's the fun stuff with live.
Love it.
So when Blake and I were mapping out our agenda for Sheep Camp, we were trying to figure out, we knew we were going to have Kevin on tonight. We had planned this a year ago, right when we had you on for the first one. And we were just trying to figure out, there's so much gold to mine when you talk to Kevin that we wanted to try and figure out something really special. So we called this episode The Pursuit of a Trophy Ram. It sounds a little bit misleading, but for most sheep hunters, any legal ram, especially your first ram, is a trophy, right? And but we thought in this episode we would try and unpack the key things that a sheep hunter needs in the toolbox in order to harvest like a real special mature ram. And I know that you've done this because if you look over Kevin's shoulder, you can see one of his sheep. I've been lucky enough to have two of his rams in my house for 4 months. I borrowed a couple of his sheep to put in our booth at the Wild Sheep Society show in Penticton, and we got a lot of people coming to look at them. So I know that you're selective, and I know how you operate. So we're going to try and unpack some of that. So I've kind of broken down the interview into some segments that we're going to kind of rip through. So the first one, which is the most important one, would be planning your hunt. And obviously the first thing people jump to when they're planning a sheep hunt is where to go and how to pick your location. So having spent some time with you on the laptop, I know you spend a lot of time e-scouting in the off season, and you got pins dropped all over the place. So let's talk about that for a little bit. What are some of the key things you look at, or one should look at, when trying to pick an area, whether it's e-scouting or word of mouth or whatever?
Yeah. When I look into an area, I'm looking for just access. Does that area get hunted a lot by residents? Does it get hunted by outfitters. So that's one of the big things. Recently I've been really focusing on areas that get a lot less pressure and a lot less eyeballs. It's not the nicest country to hunt, but I just feel for my personal sort of journey in the sheep world is that looking for these big rams, I'm having luck finding them in non-traditional sheep areas. So there's areas out there that have sheep all year. Like the ram herds are there year after year, and you can go in there and shoot really nice big rams in there, but they do get looked at a lot, and lots of the up and comers are shot ahead of time. So when I look at areas, I tend to, and I don't mind walking further. So I'm checking out these little hidey holes. Most of the time I don't have any luck whatsoever, and I'm striking out. I'm looking days and days and days without even seeing a sheep. But when you do see some sheep, they're usually sort of that age class above those areas that get picked over, by residents and outfitters and whatnot.
So more or less, your target areas are kind of the fringe areas that other guys are, like, not the super highways for sheep, right?
Yeah.
So you're trying to get on the outside edges of it.
Yep, I call them fringe areas. Exactly.
Yeah. So when you're looking at the areas, do you use the outfitter territory boundaries at all to kind of decide that? Because I would imagine in some cases an outfitter, that if their boundaries line up where there's like their dividing line between the two territories is in prime sheep country, they're probably both hunting it from both sides, right?
Yeah, so, I don't use that too much.
Okay.
I found there are no like magical, I got asked all the time about where the magical sheep spot was.
Mm-hmm.
And I would come out with some nice rams in years past, and people think, oh, well, he's hiding these spots to himself. Well, there's no secret. Like, everywhere gets looked at some point by residents or outfitters, and it's just covering lots of territory. That's one of the things I do, is I do a ton of hiking. But circling back to your original question there, I'm looking on Google Earth for areas that are generally within a mountain range or two where ewes and lambs like to hang out. So that's a big thing too, is not getting too far into Timbuktu. Mm-hmm. And so I'm looking for those areas. I'm looking for timbered areas a lot. You can spot rams on those green grassy slopes all day long, but it's hard to find them in the timbered slopes. And so that's been a really big thing for me, is finding them in the really broken timbery slopes, and they pop out and then they pop back in. Mm-hmm. and there's one area in particular that I never knew there was sheep there, and I found it by fluke. And it's timbered right to the very tops of the mountains, and that's actually where I killed some of actually this ram right behind me.
This guy.
Well, there's a little bit of an open area, and then but most of that area is timbered. So, and he came out into an open area, and that's why we saw him there.
Right. Now, without giving too much away, I know you focus on opener. That's really not a secret, and that goes back to your probably beyond that, but back to your Riverjet days, because of the way you managed that business. You would drop your boatloads of sheep hunters off for opener, and then that was your window to hunt, right?
Yep.
Do you think that terrain and area where those fringe rams are hiding out, does that change from early season into mid or late season? Like, would they move and migrate somewhere else, or do you think that's sort of home base for them?
I don't know. I never did a lot of my early season style of hunts. I never sort of carried through till September and October. Right. So I don't really know.
So you haven't done many late season ones, really?
Not a lot. Yeah. No, maybe a half a dozen over the years. So no, I don't. I can't really say for sure. I think, during the season, the rams move and they get pushed around. It could be a fire. It could be wolves. It could be people. But no, I haven't really found, like, my program lately has just been to go really early and eliminate a lot of the areas. That's what I like doing, is eliminating areas, covering lots of ground, and crossing places off the list.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when you're when you've got that sort of broken timber area that you want to focus on, so you say it's a spot you've maybe not been to before, and you've seen the ewes and lambs 2 ranges over, and you get into the area you want to hunt. How does your glassing setup look for that? Are you from the bottom up? Are you going up top, looking down, cross valleys? What are you trying to do there?
I like to be up on the mountain, and I like to hunt sort of high and just do tons of glassing. And I'll glass probably most of my day in a new area is spent just glassing, and it's boring. It's mentally tough. It's really boring. Yeah. But I don't know how many times I've been glassing, and I've glassed for 6 hours, and I'm doing my grid pattern on the mountain, and then boom, there's a ram that showed up, and I could have sworn that there's nothing there. Yeah. So it just happens, it's fluky that it happens. Yeah.
So in some areas, you don't have the ability to glass. You might have that perfect mountain that you want to find the rams in or look for them in, but you might not have a vantage point from another mountain to glass them. So you might have to glass from that same range, right? Like you might have to be above. That's got to be tricky. Right?
Yeah,
super
totally.
tricky. So you're crawling over the edges and whatnot, right?
Yep, just making my way slowly, methodically, sort of crossing the range off the list as I move. Sort of went from one area to the next, and I'm sure I've overlooked piles of really, really nice quality rams and just don't see them. They're there for another year.
At what point do you think, or do you make that decision? Like, is it 2 feeding cycles? That people talk about this I've heard it on other shows. Like you do them, the two or 3 feeding cycles, and if you don't see anything, you move on. If you're covering ground like you do, is that your strategy then?
I love that feeding cycle. I've never heard that, but that makes a lot of sense to me. And my strategy, I just kind of go with what I feel. If I feel like if I don't see sign, if I don't see bedding, in the shale, or if I don't see, tracks or any of the shit on the mountain or anything, I'll move on, but I do have to, I'll never leave until I'm 100% sure that I feel good about it. And of course I'll leave, and then sometimes it happens that they're there, but I would say I'm spending, it could be a day, it could be 2 days, but I don't really spend more than that in one area. If I don't see anything, I'll keep moving on.
2 days. Yeah. And I know you like to get in pretty early to cover that ground before opener. So you try to get an inventory in an area, right?
Yeah. And that ties back to when I was younger, I would go closer to the opener, but now I'm really interested in certain sort of caliber of rams, and you have to sift through so many rams and areas to find that. And I mean, last year I saw 13 legal rams, like some really nice ones, but just not something that I was looking for. So you're just going through so many different areas, looking at all these different sheep, and you got to walk away from lots of them.
We're going to circle back to that, because that's a whole topic. I think that, it's a whole nother discussion. What about competition when you're in those fringe areas, and let's say you're up there and you're set up and you're working day one, and all of a sudden you see 2 bodies skyline across on the other ridge or whatever. Like, do you just sort of play it by ear on what you're going to do there? And see if they just blow through or.
I learned years ago that I never change my game plan based on if I run into somebody on the trail. I just stick to my game plan and be very courteous. I've had to change things on the fly many, many times, where you just decide, well, these guys are hunting here. They've been here already. I go somewhere else. And because I'm bouncing around so much, it works. If I had one mountain complex I was interested in, or that's the only place to hunt, it might be a different story, but my style is to just really move so much. It's
cover the ground.
Yeah.
I think, like, in your case, it's special because you've got your own transportation mode, which is awesome. And that's one of the reasons you have it, probably the main reason. But, for guys like us, for Blake and I and others that, we don't have a jet boat, or we don't have a plane or horses or whatever, or even the hiking guys, right? They're committed to an area, and once you're there, you're there. So then you got some issues on your hand.
You have to be like courteous, and I have friends that it just happened last year to them. They ran into some other hunters in the area, and they came to sort of a game plan that would work for both.
Yeah.
And then the other guys decided to change their game plan, and it didn't end well. No. So it's like you have to just be willing to work with what you got.
Yeah, that's right. Play the cards you're dealt, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's cool. Is there any questions out of that segment, Blake?
We've got a couple in the chat. Maybe I'll just run through. So Dan K was asking, when you're using Google Earth or whatever other mapping tool, how do you get the most up-to-date imagery, or does that even matter to you?
That's a good question, Dan. I just use what's free, what's available on my computer. So whatever Google Earth puts out, and I do bounce back between Google Earth and Apple Maps on my iPhone. And Apple Maps is great. It's got, if one area is maybe a winter imagery or has clouds, or it's not very high resolution, I will actually use the other one. And both of them for me work offline if I've cached the maps in my device ahead of time. And that's really important to do. Otherwise you can turn on your mapping device and you see nothing. So you want to make sure you've flown the area and zoomed in and out and spun it around and
all the 3D and all
3D and all that stuff, and it will actually cache those maps in your device. And so I use either or. I'm not partial to one, and I just use the latest maps that's on there.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you use iHunter or any of that? The hunting app ones? Have you tried those?
Haven't tried iHunter, but I'm curious. Yeah. I might
Onyx is now available here as well, and I haven't played with it, but we're going to be doing. We're trying to get the iHunter guys on to do a full seminar.
Oh, great!
Yeah, live stream here. We're just trying to schedule it. So,
and I got any more questions? I got two more I want to ask, and you guys can get back to it. So, Ed Thompson was asking, will rams / sheep bed for the night in broken up timber?
Depends where my experience is where the timber is. If it's valley bottoms, I haven't seen that where they spend the night in the valley bottoms, but if there's small patches of timber that's up high, I've seen them spend the night there all the time. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. And then Caden Romaine was asking, how early is too early to get into the mountains pre-season to scout for the right ram?
Hey, Caden, nice to see you. Say hi to your dad. How early is too early? It really depends. It's a trade-off. So because of what I have going on in my life, I can't stay too deep into August. So I typically go quite early, cross all these areas off the list, take a look at look at all the different country up there, try and find a big ram and sit on it. And it's up to you. I mean, there are some areas you'll go find a nice ram, but then you're going to have a half a dozen groups come through there because it's a well-known, popular area. So you have to be okay to, negotiate or whatever with other groups, and that can be mentally tough. And they're not your sheep, and it's not your mountain. So you have to somebody can come. You can sit on a ram for 5 days before the opener, and somebody can come from the other direction and shoot that ram
opening morning
5 minutes before you go to pull the trigger. So you kind of roll the dice a little bit by going early, and you don't give yourself, if you can't stay past the opener very long, you don't give yourself a lot of options. So
once it's go time.
That's right.
Yeah. And I would imagine too, the earlier you go, the less hunters you see and the more outfitter activity you would see in there, right? Like the guides would be cutting trail and whatever.
Yeah.
So you run into them there.
Yep, for sure.
Cool. Okay. So we're gonna just shuffle along here. So I wanted to talk a little bit about transportation. In BC, we've got a few options. So you've got airplanes, horses, hiking, pretty much jet boat, and I guess ATV would be considered / hiking because you're not going to drive up on a quad and shoot a ram. Probably not. you've pretty much done all of them, right? Over the years. Like you
Yep.
started off hiking, you've
Yep.
done lots of flying, done some horseback hunting too, right?
Very little.
Very little.
Yeah.
That's more south and north, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wasn't really built for being on a horse. So.
Cowboy game, not yours?
Yeah, I couldn't walk for 2 days afterwards. But anyway,
I hear you.
but I've done them all. I started out. I didn't have a jet boat when I started out, so we flew in and we took a little boat with a 15 horse, and then graduated. Later on in the years, I was into river boats and started doing that route. Yeah.
So a lot of guys do fly-ins.
Yep.
What are some of the, I guess, what are some of the things you should think about and ask your pilot if you're doing a fly-in? Anything you should do in advance when you're booking that? Because I know we've done a few fly-ins, and there tends to be a higher chance of surprises when you land.
Yes, and that's a big one that I used to see when I was one of the transporters was ask your pilot if he has dropped anybody off at that location that year already, or is he going to drop somebody off after he's dropped you off, like maybe a day or 2 days later. That's a big one.
It's a big one.
When you stack guys into an area, you will piss off a lot of guys.
Absolutely. And now the variable seems to be, there's been so many changes within the charter companies in the north. There's different owners, different managers, different mindsets, outfitters, interests in, more business thrown to this pilot or that pilot.
Yep.
You see more different companies landing on these lakes, and I think that's an issue too, right? So you'll fly in with one guy and he'll say, no, I didn't put anybody there. When you get there, there's a camp, or you meet another airplane flying off the lake, taking off the lake from another charter service.
Yeah, and that's a tough one, and that's part of the reason why they're trying to regulate the transporter into things, or they are regulated with quotas and mandatory reporting. One of the big problems we have is illegal transporting, which it's actually kind of sad that I know lots of people that have chartered a bush plane to land on a strip in the middle of nowhere and just don't think anything about just paying this guy some cash. It's not reported. But that hurts our wildlife. I can only speak when I was a transporter. I submit my harvest, what my clients had got, and it helps those managers make really good decisions on sort of the trends of harvest and whatnot. And the illegal transporting is really grown. And it's partly what you just said about how some charter companies won't fly into certain areas and they have deals with outfitters. So that makes it tough, and it opens up the door to people hiring the services of somebody. And it's one of those things I used to tell people is they have no liability insurance whatsoever. So if something goes wrong, that's not even their fault. It could be any type of accident. You could slip and bang your head. There's nobody to sue. There's no insurance involved. And I am strongly against chartering illegal transporters.
For sure. Yeah. And I didn't realize that the air charter services have to record that all that info as well, then, right? If they're transporting hunters,
they do. With the aircraft end of things, if they have permanent structures or camps there, I don't remember the exact wording, Chuck, but it's to do with if they're going to other lakes that they don't have any services that they provide there, they do have to report. But if it's services where they have a cabin there, they don't have to report.
Gotcha. So, okay.
But don't quote me on it. It's something like that.
Something in that range. Yeah. And just for those that don't know, Kevin used to own a jet boat transport service called River Jet Adventures, and he ran that almost a decade, right?
Yeah.
9 or 10 years.
Yeah.
Right there. Yeah. And it's an interesting story. We may unpack that a little bit later if we have time, but You didn't get into it for the business side of it. You got into it for the access and experience in sheep hunting and finding country, right?
Yeah, I'm a big believer in resident access.
Yeah,
and it was a big adventure. It was awesome.
yeah.
I should write I've been told I should write a book, so
you should, or you should just come on here and tell more stories. One of the two.
Yeah, we'll do
that. Is there any other questions you think would be good things to ask a transporter when you're trying to map that out?
I can tell you one thing, what not to ask. What I found was people would always ask me, what is your success rate? And that's a terrible question to ask a transporter, because their job is to get you to a location safe and in a timely manner. So they have, you can imagine that there's every caliber and style of hunter that show up. And so it's unguided, it's on your own.
Yeah.
A guiding outfit would be more, that's an appropriate question for a guided hunt. Yeah. What's your success rate? But for just dropping people off and having them do their own thing, and a lot of first time hunters, the whole what's your success rate is not something, it didn't really apply to a transporter. But as far as what other things to ask, I mean, I think we covered. The big one is just making sure that, they're upfront with who's in the area. Do they know of a bunch of people going in there? Did they have a group of 4 guys go into this little mountain range last year and harvest 4 rams? I mean, that makes a bigger difference in the long run. Yeah,
for sure. And I think I'm on the air service side of things, just from my own experience. Make sure you understand all the extra costs.
Yeah.
Ask those questions.
Yeah.
There's a whole, we could do a whole series on just how to gear up for, especially like on a bigger expedition hunt, when you gotta map out your gear and all that fun stuff too. But good stuff. And I know I was, so Jason Palfy, who now runs Riverjet Adventures, he had a booth at the Wild Sheep Show in Penticton, and we're buddies, right? So we were chatting with him quite a bit throughout the show, and he made a comment to me about halfway through. He says, "I've never been asked so many times what my success rate is," and he goes, "I successfully transport people 100%. Yeah, they're all coming back."
For sure, that's true.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I do want to come back to the jet boating side of things if we have time, but I want to kind of hit on the the bigger picture, bigger ticket items on locating mature rams. So we talked a bit about the glassing side of things. Do you see any different patterns with bigger rams versus like younger rams? Like if there's a band, or say you see a band of 7 or 8 rams and you go, oh, well, there's one that's right there. Do you ever just say, well, maybe there's another one somewhere close by, or like, what are some tips for that? How to analyze a band of rams looking for a big one?
I mean, I found that the biggest rams are not in a huge herd. I don't know why. I'm not a sheep.
So not in the band of 20 normally, or whatever.
No, I mean, that's my experience. I'm sure other people have had different experiences, but I find like a big old ram will just do its own thing. And if people want to tag, or rams want to tag along with that ram, then great. But younger rams, I found, want to be herded up with their buddies. I've seen rams with ewes and lambs because they just want to be together. But the big old rams, the biggest oldest rams that I've seen are usually just either loners or in really small groups of similar age class rams. But that could be a product of where I'm hunting too.
Yeah.
Typically, I'm not hunting where these great big herds that
congregate together. Or whatever, yeah.
20 plus rams in a herd type thing.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I guess do you ever see like really big rams or really big groups of rams in the timber? Like,
no.
Usually it's smaller groups, right?
Yeah.
Little pockets of them.
Yeah, and I've only ever seen those great big herds of rams on more of the traditional grassy slopes and speckled on where you would traditional ram range. The bigger rams I've seen that I've picked out of the sort of the woodwork are just smaller groups and sparse timbered slopes. That's where I see them.
Yeah. It's interesting because, you know the spot I'm talking about because you helped me find it years ago. But I was in a particular drainage that had probably 7 or 8 groups of rams. I think the total count on that valley was 32 or 3 throughout the week that were in pockets.
Yep.
And I noticed that too. I noticed like the bigger rams had, with the exception of one, there was most of the rams that were good mature rams were like 1 or 2, 3 rams together.
Yeah.
And then, on the other side, you'd see another group, 2 or 3, and they'd have a decent ram in there. And then you'd see a whole bunch of young guys with maybe like a 5 or 6-year-old who was jockeying. And I think in that place, it was more of a staging area for them before they moved on to somewhere else. But yeah, it's an interesting thing. What about terrain for big rams? Does that vary? Like, especially in these fringe areas, does the terrain for the bigger rams seem to be a little different? Are they a little more cagey? Do they hide a little more? Or like any characteristics like that?
I find them just living on the mountain, but in those wacky areas, those I call them fringe areas, and they're non-traditional ram range that we all want to get there and look at these big, sexy, grassy slopes and look for specks in them.
Yeah.
Stone sheep. And I find that the big rams, when I'm glassing broken country, there'll be just a couple of rams on some little pinnacles on some timbered areas, or just not in those. I don't spend a lot of time anymore looking at those big slopes that you'll get the big herds of rams on.
Or the lambs and ewes on. Right.
Yeah, I don't find the lambs and ewes together with rams.
Yeah.
Usually they're a mountain range or 2 over within striking distance. But for sure, I've noticed that the biggest rams do their own thing. That would be the one takeaway that I remember when because I've spent so many hours just sitting and observing them.
Yeah.
Learned a lot and still learning a lot, but I do notice that those big rams will just feed off in one direction, and they don't care. They're not following anybody. So the young rams will always want to feed close to their friends. They don't get too far away. The big rams just do their own thing, and whoever comes along with them is along.
Yeah. So we had an interesting, and you know the story because I talked to you about this last year. We watched a group of rams that had a couple of mature rams in the group, and then there was like 5 younger rams. They were bedded in an extremely high, hard to access area, cliffs, and the 2 older rams never left that spot for the entire day, and the younger ones tootled off and went to the bottom of the mountain and fed for hours.
It's funny how that works.
And it's weird because like we were trying to figure out what are these guys eating, because they didn't really feed. They just hung out there all day, 6-7 hours, right?
Yeah.
So I think that if you don't see them, like honestly, if you'd had walked up into that valley and looked over and saw all those young rams feeding, I don't think you would have seen the other rams in the cliffs, like because they were extremely hard to find glassing, right? But we happened to see them first and saw them move down. So that was a big takeaway for us, was like, just when you see a small group of rams on one side, don't discount the fact that these other rams could be close, because these were 300-400 yards away as the crow flies up the mountain, but they were still in the same drainage, right? So I think that's an important glassing tip, just expand that area, right?
Glass. Spend as much. It's so boring, but you got to do it.
Yeah, for sure. I was just going to say, I think we might have touched on this before. Do you see different feeding patterns with the bigger rams versus the younger guys? Like, are the younger guys more restless and jumping around and eating more, or the big guys? Because in this case, they were when we saw them. But
I haven't noticed that, Chuck. I haven't really thought of, no, I haven't really noticed that. They seem to all just feed and behave like stone sheep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to add on, like locating, trying to find them? Any other tips or tricks or advice for guys?
Well, it's easy to spot rams when there's 20 rams in a herd. It really is. It's easier. They're hard to spot. But when you're looking on the terrain for 2 rams or 1 ram, that becomes very challenging, because you might spot of a herd of 20 rams, they could all be hidden in long grass, but you might see, horns on a younger ram or a white ass or something. and once you look at one and then you're looking around, you see all his friends. With the big rams, it's just that are by themselves. It's just so much harder, and that really is seat time behind your scopes and glassing and just doing your really regimented grid pattern over and over again. It's just it's so boring. I always say it, but it pays off all the time. And have when I'm hunting with my sheep hunting partner, he's doing the same thing, and we're both sort of independently going back and forth across the face and for hours and hours, and then we stretch and go have a bite to eat, and then we'll come back and do the same thing again and
stick to that area.
Yeah.
What about your glassing setup? Are you binos first until you see something and then spotter? Like what's your glassing program?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always, when I'm hiking, I'm looking through my binos. I usually have a good idea about where in general I want to be looking. So it's all about finding the best vantage point to glass that one area. So I'll hike to that area, have a quick look at my binos. It seems like my partner does it all the time, and then he picks up the rams first.
Yeah, so it works with me too.
Yeah, but I'll set up my spotter right away and just start, and I'll just quickly glass the most sort of higher percentage areas, I think, and just to make sure, and then start my grid pattern across the mountain.
Do you run your binos on a tripod?
No, I don't. No.
Well, after the show, I'm going to show you this setup because it's pretty slick.
Yeah, you were showing me lots of goodies tonight. I'm going to have to order some of those gaiters.
Yes, you will. Yeah, you will for sure. They're awesome. So Blake, our program is, I have a 10 power pair of binoculars with a rangefinder in them, and I got Blake running 12 power Swaros, and he doesn't use a tripod, and he'll only use the spotter when he sees something. So he's so good with those 12s that, it's like a mini spotter for him.
That's awesome.
With my eyes getting weaker, I started using binos off a tripod, and it is a game changer. Like anybody who's done it, for the most part, will agree. It saves you on the eye strain and stuff. So we'll circle back later and I'll show you that stuff. It's pretty cool.
Sure.
Okay. So let's move on to the actual field judging and evaluating big rams. Everybody, we could do the whole horn aging thing, and it's, beat to death on every podcast, and we need that. We need as many resources as we have. We have a ton of resources on here from a lot of great contributors, but I want to take it sort of up a notch to, like, you spend a lot of time covering ground I know you spend a ton of time covering ground until you find that ram. Like you said, you're in there early and you do multiple days before the season, and you inventory, like you said, you had 13 rams you saw, you knew where they were roughly. Let's talk about the process in which you determine that's the one for Kevin. So, walk me through a typical year where you've spotted a bunch of rams and then found that magic one, whether he was the first one you saw or the last one you saw.
Yeah, it's I have found the biggest rams that I've harvested have been, I just know. The look of the horns on the sheep are just so massive, and the weight just goes on for days, and the length is long, and for example, last year we saw, my partner and I ended up seeing some rams that were way over the bridge of the nose, like 6 inches over the bridge of the nose, but they just didn't drop low enough. Tighter curl. And because we're so picky now, like my partner has killed quite a few stone sheep, and I've been lucky too. So it's more just finding those special rams. And one of the things that I look for is, does it sweep low on the curl? If that ram was to lay down and put his chin on the dirt, would it rest on the bottoms of the horns? So the low swoop of the curl it really helps a score of a ram too. But I'm looking for just something that's really loopy. Yeah. And then obviously length, that's one thing. And does it carry weight? 2/3 of the way down the horns. So lots of rams I've seen are really heavy bases, and then they just kind of thin right up. And so we're looking for weight that's carried further down the horn. So we look for the curl, we look for the weight, the length, obviously. Is it broomed? This year I'm really hoping for a double broom ram. So this ram behind me was not broomed off, but it just had that long sort of flared out look. I thought it was a really neat looking ram. So that's what I look for in horns. And for aging, I don't recommend to shoot on age unless you're super experienced, you've been doing it for many years and you're comfortable. And like you said, there's tons of resources and we have, great people working to educate. Our provincial biologist, Bill, is like awesome. He just does these seminars around the province to sort of get people to really think about, the maturity and really consider if you're going to pull the trigger on a ram that's not over the bridge. You have to be 110% sure, not walking up wondering, is it legal?
Exactly. Well, you know where I stand on that, because I've put my my binos down and put the rifle on the pack a few times with rams, just because I don't want to make that. I don't want to make that that scary walk over after the shot with all the emotions of whether it's legal or not. And you mentioned Bill Jackson, his seminars, and the way the government's doing. They're doing a lot of them this year, and there's a few more. We've got a few posted on the platform. And awesome. I was talking to a few guys that attended the one here in the Fraser Valley a week or two ago, and it's even more of a bigger focus now on, let's focus on the curl. Let's get past the bridge of the nose. Too many mistakes are being made. We're still seeing mistakes. There was, and it's not just the immature rams getting shot or short sheep getting shot. There's mistakes being made on the harvest and the meat and things like that as well. But again, if it's a no doubter, you're going to know. And let's hope you're looking for the bridge of the nose. I mean, that's sort of where we're at in our journey, Blake and I, is trying to get 100% ID on the ram and make sure.
Well, there's a lot of pressure nowadays, it seems, with social media to get that heroic picture of a ram, and so I find that guys are willing to roll the dice more when they shouldn't be, and they should be 100% sure and know exactly before they pull the trigger exactly what they're harvesting. Not, you want to look for older rams. Let's harvest the 9-year-olds, the 10-year-olds, and
it can be misleading.
At least try to anyway.
And it can be misleading on age too, right? Like this ram behind you is just a ram, but what's the age on him?
8.
He's 8 years old. So he's legal twice. But I mean, if you saw that ram on the other side of a mountain and you're a new hunter, you're not thinking he's 8 years old, right? Like you're looking at him going, holy shit, that's got to be a 10-year-old ram, right? And then you start looking at it, and
it's also genetics too. Some regions of the province, a ram like that, if it was that big, that they don't get a good growing season, the genetics aren't as big. I tend to hunt in the areas with the best genetics in the record book. So that Musqua, Prophet Musqua, Tishoti, that whole block there up to the highway seems to have really good genetics over all the years, and that's where I'd like to focus. And there are beautiful big rams that come out of Region 6 all the time, and I actually laid my hands on some that are every bit as big, if not bigger, than the one behind me.
There's some absolute studs. And then that that pops another thing into my head is there's a lot of written resources out there. The Bill Pastoric books, the Dream Rams. And,
for sure.
You look at some of the old books, and for people that aren't into books, I think you're missing like an entire educational vehicle for sheep hunting, because there's some amazing. Like you go into those particular books. Maybe Blake, I know there's another. Is there another one coming up? He's got another volume coming out, right, Bill? We talked to him at the show.
Yeah. I think he was aiming for September, but I'm not sure where he's at with it right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great resource.
Oh man, just looking at the rams in there, and they give you kind of a rough, not the mountain, but they give you the sort of the region, and then the game records too. Right?
Yeah.
The BC record book and the Boone and Crockett they're all great resources too.
For sure. Yeah.
So I'm gonna bounce a scenario off you here. I'm just curious how you handle it because I know you've had it, because you've told me you have. So you must hit that old bird in the hand scenario where, you know, you go in there on the 25th of July or whatever, and you're going up a drainage and you find that ram.
Yep.
And you're well ahead of schedule. You're in a spot you weren't intending to see a ram. You want another drainage 10 miles back. How do you handle that? Like when it's like a week in advance, are you going to put him to bed and just take a shot at finding another one, or what do you do? I forgot
I told you this. This exact thing happened to us. We found a great ram second day of our hike, and we were well in advance of the season. And the way I do it with my partners, we alternate years. Yep. So it was his turn to harvest his ram that he wants. And we found a really nice one. And the thing we have working for us is, because it's so fringy, not a lot of guys go there. Not even outfitters will go in there because it's hit and miss. It's so hit and miss.
You just never know.
You never know. Whereas for a lot of people, a guarantee are those really nice hillsides that have ram herds every year. So that's where they go. And fair enough. Mm-hmm. But we found that great ram, and we ended up leaving him.
Yeah. And
we did a big hike, sort of our big trek. I think that year we did 130 kilometers total. And we ended up not seeing any other sheep. That we saw lots of nice legal rams, but nothing that compared to that one. It was just so weighty all the way down. And so we ended up going back right before the opener and rolling the dice. And the whole time we were hiking, we wondered if we made a mistake, and it was mentally exhausting.
Yeah. Brain drain.
Yeah, totally. And we ended up going back there, and it's just so remote. There's not many guys go in there. Mm-hmm. And so we felt that was actually a mitigating thing for us, was getting away from that ram. We felt okay because it was so fringy. Mm-hmm. And when we went
back,
he
with a bunch of other rams? Or
yeah,
yeah. So he was with a group. So he could have been picked off by someone else, like spotting the larger group, right? Yeah. Numbers get them in trouble, right?
They sure do. And luckily for us, he was, I picked him up sort of halfway down another mountain range when we came back. They sure move.
Oh yeah.
And then got lucky enough and got close and got him opening day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, that's a cool story. I did set you up a little because I knew that story.
Yeah.
Blake wanted me to ask. I think I know the answer. I better know the answer because I was involved here. But what are you running for glass on your binos and your spotters?
I have just 10x42s, Swarovski, the range ones, because I shoot a turreted scope. Yeah. And a angled Swarovski spotter, 65. Yeah.
You like the angle, hey?
I am a big fan of the angled spotting scope. Yeah. Because I'm always sitting. Mm-hmm. And for me, it's more comfortable to sit and have my head sort of tilted down than straight, or if I'm looking up, then my head's back a little bit.
Yeah.
And I do like the option of being able to periscope your spotter if you need to, which I've done. But yeah, that's what I run. Nothing simple. I'm not a complicated sheep hunter. There are guys that are real experts of this stuff, but I just got a really good set of glass of binos, good spotter. I don't really think that was one thing I spent a lot of money on was the optics.
Yeah.
And
your rifle scope's a Swaro too, right?
Yeah.
You kind of fall in the same camp as Blake when it comes to your your gear, like your rifle. Your rifle is the tool that kills the animal.
Yeah.
And it's got a job to do, and it's good to a certain distance. That's how Blake looks at it, because you've shot the same rifle for forever now.
Yeah. Yeah, I shoot a carbon barrel, carbon stock.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get as ultralight as I can with my kit, so it's been good. It's a good, accurate rifle. There are some that are way better than mine, but it works for me. I beat it up over many years, and it still keeps on ticking. Yeah.
Yeah. Before we jump on, I wanted to kind of just jump back to the evaluation of big trophy rams. So the criteria for you is deep curl,
mass, age, like aging, getting all those rings that are stacking up to the base. Do the bases, are they close together? You know, if you see a lot of daylight between the bases, they're not going to be that, you know, they're going to be smaller bases. So to find a ram with 15-inch bases, it's going to look like balloons that are close together. So that's a big one, is how big are the bases, proportionality, how big do the horns look in general to the body of the ram, but that can be tricky. You can get really small body rams that have their horns look huge, but they're average.
I was going to say, because you got to look at the health of the animal and his body size in relation to, there's a lot of tips there. I look for sway back. Is it kind of, does it look full and healthy and plump, or is it more like kind of skinny and gaunt and way less fat on it? That'll typically be an older ram too. So it could be an unhealthy younger ram, but typically the older ones that are 10 plus are starting to be, you know, on the decline a little bit. I know, it's interesting when you like, that's the one thing I love about sheep is everything's different. Like there's no two rams that are identical. Like very rarely you see carbon copies on the hill. And I know we did have one successful year with my buddy there, and he had that big old double broomer, and I caped it for him. It was my first ram. Well, it's the only ram that I've ever caped, but the horns were so close together, I could not turn a small Havilon blade sideways between them. So that was interesting.
I saw the pictures of that ram. It was awesome.
It was good. And that was shot on age. And I could have shot that one, but I was just too terrified to make that decision. I wasn't experienced enough.
You have to be comfortable and feel good about it. Should be fun.
So I'm curious, all your years of running River Jet, what was the oldest by age ram that you saw pulled out of there in a decade?
14.
Is that right?
Yeah.
What was the structure of horn on that? Was he all broomed off, or?
Totally broomed way back. I think the gentleman that harvested that ram didn't know what he had. In fact, I know he didn't know what he had. It was such an amazing sheep, broomed way back, maybe 3 inches below the bridge, and the ends of the horns were they're huge. They look like baseball bats.
It's like bighorn country, hey?
Yeah,
like bighorn ram.
Yeah, and it was just such a really nice old ram. Hardly any teeth. It was
probably
heavy.
Last year, or it had to be close.
I don't know.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
You never hear of them really getting past, like many taken past like 12 or 13. Like that's super old.
Yeah, it was a really nice ram, and surprisingly healthy body too.
Yeah. Just a warrior.
Just an old.
Was his face just beat to beans? I bet it was.
He had a big Roman nose on him,
which
was kind of cool, and so he's been a battler.
In
his days, but it was. That was about the oldest ram I saw.
Yeah. Cool. All right, man. Did we have any questions, Blake? Anything kicking there?
There was another comment just around the glassing timber and like rams hanging out in timber. You did cover a good chunk of it, Kevin, but let me see if I can find that. So Brian was asking, a patch of high timber, they'll lay down in that, and that is likely a bed. Like, that seems to be what you're saying, right? That's the thing. They'll bed in the sort of the edges of that.
Yeah, I've seen them when it's really hot out. They'll go into the timbers just to get out of the sun. When I mean timber, I don't mean thick valley bottom. I mean patches, patches of trees on the mountainside. They could be quite high on the mountain in some places, or right near the very tops of the mountain. But for some reason, my experience is in the areas that I hunt, they feel quite safe in there, and you'll walk through there and there'll be trails everywhere and beds and just mounds of sheep crap in
just
there.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
One thing before we move on to terrain, I just thought of, so this year it looks like it's going to be a pretty dry year in the north. We had little snowpack. Rivers are probably going to be pretty low, and water's going to be a challenge. Does that affect where these rams are going to be hiding? Do you see a pattern there year over year?
I don't see a pattern. No.
They seem to find water, right?
Yeah, it's amazing where they can find water, and they'll travel to find water, and they don't need a lot of water. So it's not like they need to be constantly near the water sources. They can come down, have a drink, and go for a day or maybe even more, and then come back and they seem to know where it is. So
then they get it out of vegetation, I guess, too, right? They'll get some water out of that.
I guess, yeah. Should have been a sheep biologist in my other life, but I don't know what they get from the plants.
Well, I know we were talking to Shane the other night about the deserts, and he's like, they just don't have water, so they're living on cactus and whatever plants they could get water from, right? So
yeah.
This might be a cactus year up north.
Yeah, it looks pretty dry.
Pretty dry. I want to talk a little bit about the mental toughness side of sheep hunting.
Right.
And I think it's sheep hunting especially, but this same could apply to goats or any extreme kind of adventure hunting. And the thing that we hear that ends most sheep hunts more than anything is people finding an excuse to come off the mountain. And I know you've seen this many, many times in your Riverjet days. And also, you've told me a couple stories where you've taken people, because that's one thing you have been. You've been very generous in getting people onto their first rams or taking them out to areas. So I want to talk a little bit about that side of things. And, I guess the next thing that I would add to that is you're one of those guys. There's a select level of sheep hunter that is just absolutely hardcore, that, there's nothing taking you off the mountain unless it's like absolute pure safety. Let's talk a little bit about that, the mental toughness side of things.
Yeah. I think the main thing I believe in is you're having a realistic expectation. That's a big part of when you go out and you go climb these mountains, what's your expectation? And I saw it all the time over the years where guys would show up, there'd be a group of 4, and they're already saying, they haven't even left the river yet, and they're saying, when we've got our 4th ram down, would you be able to come back on this date? And I would say, just go out and have fun and try to find one, just one, and go from there. So having a right expectation will really go a long way for mental toughness down the road. Because if your expectation is four people and 4 rams, you're mentally going to get beat up. I've never seen 4 rams actually with it before. So I
was gonna say that's got to be rare.
So have a great expectation of like, let's just go try and find 1 legal ram and go from there. It's like, okay, now let's go find 2 more. And so mental toughness is such a big, it's such a big part of the hunt. It's huge, and it's right up, like, I don't know the number for physical to mental toughness, like what's more, but I saw some pretty in shape guys throw in the towel right away. And because a lot of first time sheep hunters don't realize it's one of the hardest stone sheep hunting, unsupported backpack style hunts are, if not the most, one of the hardest hunts on the planet to do. And I if guys show up, to the river and they're not prepared. Well, they can be prepared physically, but mentally they could easily throw in the towel because they're like, wow, I didn't realize I had to work this hard to go this high, and the bugs are biting me, and I stepped on a wasp nest, and I saw a grizzly bear, print in the muck, and it just mentally chews them up.
Shit gets real very fast
Totally
in the back.
Yeah.
It doesn't even have to be a sheep hunt.
Yeah,
you can be on any hunt.
It's hard. So if you expect it to be the hardest thing you've ever done in your life, I hope you're pleasantly surprised that it's not. You want to have that right mental attitude going into the hunt. So and just don't quit. A friend of mine always said the same thing. He's a friend of yours too. He said, it's never too far. And he said, it's only sweat. And he said, it builds character.
Yeah, exactly.
Those are the 3 things he would always say. And he's not most in shape guy, but man, he's like a freight train. Just slowly gets up there and can climb every single mountain that an in shape awesome sheep hunter can do. So.
Yeah, and I think if you're one of those sheep hunters that maybe isn't the distance athlete or any of that, I think it's more important for you to understand where your physical limitations are.
Yeah.
And that can be found on the grouse grind, the Abbey grind with a weighted pack. Go out in 28-degree heat and do the Abbotsford grind. Put 50 pounds on your back and try to hike that and just see where you need to stop.
Yeah.
And in my journey as a sheep hunter, starting at 50 years old, wishing I'd started at 20, and then having a partner who's in his 20s, it's been an interesting journey because I had to learn the hard way where my start and stops are physically, and then apply my mental sort of toughness or maybe lack of toughness into that combination to try to figure out. And then the key thing is making sure your partner understands that, right?
Yeah.
And I noticed, I've talked about this before in a couple different interviews, but if there's a point on every sheep hunt, pretty much every sheep hunt I've been on, where you hit a point where you're flirting with that, that easy button. Like in your mind, you're like, all right, I had my worst day. And I give this example. I think it was last year or the year before, one of the two. We had just been slogging to try to find this trail through the bush, straight up a mountain. We lost the trail. It was pouring rain. We're going straight up in knee-deep moss, straight up.
Sounds like a stone sheep hunt.
Sounds exactly like a stone sheep hunt.
Yeah.
And I was leading the way. Blake was behind me. Mosquitoes were just like everything was happening. And I ended up, I slipped and I smashed my knee on a rock or something. And then I got up, got the pack on and I'm trying to maneuver and I tripped again, fell flat on my face in the muck, get back up, turned around and went to walk and a stick went right behind my glasses and poked me in the corner of my eye. All happened in 20 seconds. And I had to just stop and take a moment before my meltdown. Like, it was like, I was like in the ring, a boxing ring, and the guy's just beating the shit out of me. And I got nowhere to go but just take the punches, right? And it was like, my partner's like, hey, Dad, just take a deep breath. Yeah. Just relax for a minute. We'll figure out where the trail is. And I took that minute. He got me laughing. We joked a little bit. And then I took 3 steps to my right and stepped out onto the horse trail.
And how was your mental frame of mind?
Right,
just 180. Yeah.
180.
Awesome.
Right. Great. And, and I think I imagine it's extremely hard for solo sheep hunters when they hit that potential breaking point of like, holy crap, I can't do it. You start getting the mental doubts, right? And I think that's where the partner is so important, right? Like,
it's for safety and for other reasons, but I've done a lot of solo sheep hunting, and it's really, the mental game is huge there.
Even more so.
And this, you reminded me of a quick story. I had a customer of mine that went by himself, and I got him set up in some pretty good area, and he went back there, and it's a tough, rocky area, and he never saw any sheep. And I think he was there for like 12 days by himself. Right. And so on day 9, he messaged me saying, could I come pick him up early with the boat? And I said, well, my schedule didn't work and I can't. He wasn't hurt or anything. He just wanted to come out. He threw mentally done. Mm-hmm. And he said, okay, well, I'm going to come back out and hang out by the river for 3 days. And I said, you're crazy. You should camp up in sheep range for those days. Spend all that time up there. You're gonna come back down
below
to the river, and you'll just be down below where there's more bugs and probably lots of people. And so he ended up staying up there. And on the last day, when he's about to pack up, he woke up in the morning, heard shale, unzipped his tent, and there was the ram of his dreams standing right there. And he ended up harvesting it. And he said to me after, he said, I would never have got that nice ram if you hadn't convinced me to stay, just hang out up there. So the more time you spend up there, your odds are just huge.
Yeah. It's so easy to look for an excuse, right?
Yeah, it is.
And that's
the hardest one. It's the hardest hunt. Yeah.
Yeah. Any advice for people trying to sharpen that knife, the mental knife? Like, that's a tough one, man. I don't know how. People have asked me. It's like, Blake says it best. He says, he's in great shape and I'm the stubborn guy. So it's like we're a pretty good combo, right? Like
Yeah.
I just stubborn my way up the mountain
You guys complement each other.
a little bit. yeah.
Perfect.
Sometimes we're not complimentary to each other, especially out there. We have our little war of words every once in a while, but yeah. But any advice for that? Like, how do you develop it? Like, I don't even know how to answer it myself. But
Well, I mean, I think you just have to have the right mindset. If you have a partner, it's got to be the right partner. Not everybody's a sheep hunter.
no.
It's not for everybody. I dealt with that a lot, and it's just not everybody's cup of tea. And you want to have a great partner. Hopefully your partner doesn't slip his rock collection into your backpack without your knowledge. Had that happen.
For the 40-pounder of whiskey, and you
Yeah,
don't see it.
yeah, that's always a fun thing to find at the top of the mountain.
That has a good ending, at least.
Yeah,
Not the rocks.
Not the rocks, no. But yeah, it's I don't know. I think it's very individual.
Yeah.
You know, the whole hunt, the whole process, and yeah.
Well, I know for a fact you've had a select few sheep hunting partners over the years.
Yeah.
That's got to be quite a process, because like you told me, and I know how you operate. You only have a select window nowadays of time to do it because of your job, your current job, your real career. So you've got that couple weeks a year that you're spending on the mountain. How do you go through that vetting process and keeping a partner? That's got to be a challenge.
Well, I mean, I've been so lucky. My partner for many years, we've hunted together and harvested some really nice sheep. I took him in on his 44th birthday, and he.
We're gonna get to that one.
Yeah, okay, I'll leave that one for a little bit. But I've been just lucky. I have a really small circle. I don't know. I'm kind of a quiet loner guy, and I don't have a huge network of people. And then my longtime sheep hunting partner kind of hung up the boots, and had to find a new partner. And that's, like you're saying, that's an interesting process. And I just found somebody I clicked with, and I got so lucky, man. I'm so lucky to hunt with him. So yeah.
There's no Tinder for sheep hunters, really, right?
No, there isn't. But
maybe we should put up space up for like Tinder for sheep hunters. Like, what do you think? Start doing some speed dating here on the platform.
Yeah, I don't know about that one.
But your partner, I know a little bit, but your partner and you are different people too. Like, you guys are not the same age, right? He's way younger than me, and he's a machine. Yeah. And I'm getting up there. I'm getting a little long in the tooth now, and so I'm a little wiser in my choices. But my partner is not only is just an awesome guy, but physically he's just next level. He's a soccer player, and he can tap dance up those mountains, no problem. So, and there's been times he's taken way more than his share of the weight, which has been great. That's nice.
Well, that was one of the things I told him. I said, in order to hunt with me, you got to take 50% more load. No, I didn't say that.
I'll bring the boat. You bring extra.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty. Like I said before, I'm fortunate to hunt with him, and he's an amazing sheep hunter and a hell of a good guy too.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, last question on that. So, if you look at all the attributes of a sheep hunter, not necessarily a partner, but I guess it applies to a partner. If you were given some advice to somebody on, maybe what's the best personal attribute a sheep hunter can have in order to be, I don't even want to say successful, but to like enjoy it and want to do it every year. What's the best attribute?
It's kind of cliche, but it actually really is true. A positive attitude. Yeah, it's you hear it all the time, but when going gets tough, having a positive attitude. When you're smoked in and there's a fire and you can't see anything for 4 days, just understand it's out of your control and be positive and have fun. And when you're reined in for 4 days, socked in and soaking wet and damp, and you want to leave, just understand what the situation is and just be positive.
Have you ever had that? I mean, maybe you don't want to answer it.
Uh-oh.
Have you ever had that nightmare situation with someone on a mountain and you're in deep, and it's like in a couple days in you realize, oh, I can't hunt with this person and we're stuck here?
Nope.
No, you've
never had that.
lucky.
No, I've been, like I said, I've only ever had a couple of partners over the years. So yeah, been lucky, fortunate.
And they're all good guys. Cool. All right. Well, one of the things, I don't think we got many questions. I think we got a lot of listening folks tonight. Blake's got something.
Yeah, I've got a question. Maybe two. There's one from Kevin McCollum. He was asking about the fire that just started up at the Shoshone Lakes there. Any thoughts on how that might affect sheep in the area?
Well, Chuck asked me earlier about, do fires affect sheep? And I haven't noticed that. But I'm also usually not hunting right close to a forest fire. But I think that one that just started up, I know exactly where it is. And that particular one there, I'm hoping it'll sort of be hemmed in that valley. There's a lot of rock all the way around that area that go really high. So with no trees. So I'm hoping it'll sort of stay in that area there and not have embers sort of continue to light it.
Yeah.
So I don't know how it's going to affect. I know it'll make for some impatient sheep hunters on the opener for sure. Yeah. Because we're going to have smoke. And you just got to wait it out, because the thing with smoke is it could be there for 2 days and you wake up on the third morning and it's shifted and
moves around,
and then you start seeing everything you want to see. So
yeah, good stuff. Blake, you got another one?
Yeah. Just in regards to your like you say, you cover a lot of ground, Kevin, which we know, but this might be a silly question, but are you connecting up on trail systems that you sort of know already? Or is it a lot of, okay, this is a valley I want to scope out. I have never been in. I don't know any trail. We're literally going to bushwhack our way up it. Because I think that sort of ties into the mental toughness side a little bit too, right? Like, I know there's some people that if they don't have the trail, no thanks. And then there's some others that, it can be the shittiest, thickest forest and they'll still push their way on. But how do you kind of judge that sort of thing?
I think, the horse trails in the north are great. There are super highways for getting from A to B. All of the really good sort of consistent producing areas will have horse trails into them, or guides trails, or some sort of foot trail. The thing I do is I pick a route that I want to do, and if there's a trail, I'll use it. But sadly, there seems to not be a trail more often than a trail, and I'm just bushwhacking up the mountain, bushwhacking, over the ridges to try and maintain those areas that I want to go see. So I would rather bushwhack up a slope than take all that extra time to go find the trail and then go around. I would rather just beeline it and take my time and, just chip away slowly, and eventually you're up where you want to be. But it's definitely a thing where there are times, man, I wish I would have had trails, especially coming out with a heavy pack. If you've got sheep in there and your whole camp, and I'm by myself, you want to have a trail. Nice. Yeah. And there are times I've picked up trails. It's a bit longer to get back to where I want to get to, but there are times when I've definitely walked a bit longer with a heavy pack, just to have a little better trail rather than sort of, we've used ropes, we've used belts, we've used pants as ropes to get down areas that we probably shouldn't have been in. Yeah. But it's a shorter route. And
is that saying you told me, if the sheep can get there, you can get there?
I believe that. Yeah.
I've heard you say that a couple times. Yeah. Blake has questioned that with me. He's like, just because Kevin said go there, you're not going there.
Yeah.
And it's like,
if you're I always would try to help some of the new sheep hunters and say, if you're not sure, just don't take any risks. It's not worth having a catastrophic injury or dying over this. Just take it easy, find a trail. If it takes you longer to get in there, great.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we got a pretty serious question from someone we both know well. So I'm going to ask it, and then we're going to change gears here. Is it true that Kevin is so ultralight he makes his partner share a sleeping bag? That's Cole, Hank.
Yeah, I know Cole. Hi, Cole. No, I don't share a sleeping bag, but we share a pillow.
There you go. He's running a quilt, baby. Well, that's awesome, buddy. Okay, well, that's all the serious stuff. Now I want to get to some I think the favorite part that most of our members like to hear is the stories. So yeah. I know you got a ton. Tell us a story about the pursuit and successful harvest of a really nice ram, a special ram. And I think it's the one that you referred to a few minutes ago. But
yeah, that one I loved because my partner shot that ram.
Yeah.
That one there, I'd flukily found so I would hike every year for almost a month in July. Mm-hmm. And for me, it was about making sure, because I was running a business and I was concerned about our sheep numbers always. And it had to be, if clients are going to areas, I want to make sure that there's a healthy sheep population. Yeah. So I would hike all of those areas in July and make sure that those ram numbers were where they should be. And
so a question on that. So if you had somebody that was, so you go in an area and, for whatever reason, you see something has happened, winter kill or whatever, and you've got people kind of earmarking that spot, or I guess in your case, you had a lot of people asking you for spots.
Well, they would ask for advice, but I'd have people that would say, hey, we want to book your service. We want to get dropped off in this area and hunt this drainage. Mm-hmm. And I would go typically pass through some of those areas and just go, hey guys, just so you know, I didn't really see what I would normally see. And doing it so many years, you get a trend. You see what is normally in there. And I wouldn't see them all, obviously. I would miss a bunch, but you get a general idea. And I would pass that on as a courtesy. Mm-hmm. And then also I would open up new areas every year. And I pushed into a new area, and I was looking in one area, and I happened to look 180 behind me on a timbered hill. Mm-hmm. And saw a bit of a white ass through the trees, and I knew that was a sheep right away. Mm-hmm. And I just had to wait forever, and it came out into a little opening, and I knew that was a special ram. Mm-hmm. And I would go back year after year and find that exact ram, and they never really left that mm-hmm. area. I'm sure they moved out for breeding, but they would always be on that same hill. Mm-hmm. And I watched them for 3 years.
Wow.
And yeah.
So in that case of that ram, then was the outfitter working that area too? Or
I don't know.
Other pressure? Like, did you see other people?
I never saw anybody else in that area. No. Mm-hmm. And so I just ended up going back there for the opener with my partner one year, which is pretty funny because I kind of knew what to expect. And when we went in there, we looked up on the hill, and I said, hey, check that area out. And he
might want to look there.
You might want to look there. And he looks and he says, oh, there's some ewes and lambs. And I was like, what? So I put my spotter on it, and I could see it was all of the sheep had headgear there. There wasn't that many, but they were all rams. And I said, mm-hmm. hey, come look through my scope here, buds. And he looked through there, and it was awesome. He just freaked out. And he was like, and
this was his birthday.
It was not his quite birthday. Yet.
Okay.
Well, his birthday happened a little bit after the fact, but it was his 44th birthday.
His 44th birthday.
He turned 44. Okay. Yeah. So we went out there and we camped on that ram right before the opener and got lucky and got him right on the opener. And the best part about that story was my partner, he's hunted a lot. He doesn't get buck fever, and he doesn't get shaky on ram. He'd killed rams before then. Mm-hmm. And he's on this sheep and he's prone, and I'm filming. Mm-hmm. And he's just calm, and they're all bedded down, and we're just waiting for it to stand up. And it finally stood up, and he takes the shot. We were not very far. We were maybe 250 yards, and he missed. And he's like, where did I hit it? And I said, you missed it. And he's like, what do you mean? And then they all clumped together. There was a little group of rams. They all kind of come together. And I said, he goes, well, which one is it? And I'm like, it's the one with the effing giant horns.
That big fucking,
Yeah, shoot. And he shot again right away and got it. And I loved the look on his face when we went up to it. It was one of those few times when you go up and the ram just got bigger and bigger. Yeah. And it was a mid 170 ram.
Yeah.
It was
I think I think it's on the platform. I think you posted it very early on. Maybe Blake can dig it up before the end of the show, but I think it's in there somewhere.
Yeah, maybe.
I remember seeing it on
yeah.
I think you
pretty tight with my photos.
But that one, I think
for you and Blake, I'll make some exceptions.
Okay, so I have a question. So, so you say you watched it for 3 years. So when you watched it, was it like the annual early July trip? You'd sneak in there and just make sure he was still in, just check on him.
Yep. Yeah, just go in there and poke around and yeah.
So he's 44. How old was he?
Well, that ram was, I think that ram was 10 years old.
Okay.
Now the person that plugged the ram, the CI aged him 14 plus. And I just left it at that. I never made.
You weren't going to debate that.
No.
Interesting. Isn't that crazy how, one perspective changes from person to person on the age, right?
Yeah.
Having rings and stuff.
Yeah, it's a big problem, the whole aging thing. And if it could be a really old ram, but only show 7 rings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. That's a cool story. Yeah. Did he do full body on that one?
Did a full body mount. It's in his living room.
Nice.
And it's a really, really impressive ram. It's
no doubt.
It's a beaut.
That's cool. Yeah. All right. So I know you've got a few of these ones, but what's one of your favorite first ram stories for someone else? I think you told us your first ram story on the last year's episode. So if anybody wants to hear that one, it's in the archives. But
first ram story. Well, with me, it's been tough because my partner and I killed some sheep together. But
even a client. I mean,
I heard about some good ones. One of the things that happens is tears, and which is great. I mean, that emotion, it's just so, the whole thing just comes out all at once, and I love that. And it might have even happened to me, allegedly.
Yeah. So the rumor has it.
The rumor had. Well, I was also chopping onions before the hunt.
You have to be chopping onions. There's always one in the bag.
But one gentleman got his first ram, made an incredible shot. He wasn't in the best shape, and he got himself into a really good area and made an awesome shot on a ram. And took him a while to get up to this ram, and he just lost it. And he was
he solo or was it with?
No, he was with somebody, and his partner finally had to, there was so many. I mean, there's tears, but then there's just inconsolable after 15-minute tears. And his partner's like, okay, pull yourself together, and had to
get your shit together,
collect himself. And so, I mean, that was neat, just the outpouring of emotion. But I think all rams are special. All first rams are special. All rams are special.
Well, they are for sure.
First, second, third, 20th. They're all.
Yeah.
All cool.
Blake wants me to ask for a story on a cool broomed off ram, just one of those real gnarly. Any, I guess whether it's yours or your partner's. As I know you guys have seen some nice ones, but you're after the big double one
this year. Yeah. I hope. Hopefully, I'll find one.
Any stories of some that you guys have been on or?
Well, last year we saw some really nice broom rams. One in particular that was right there, and we ended up leaving and running into some other people, and I ended up telling them about that ram, and I think they shot that ram actually.
Nice.
Yeah. So I'm not.
And that's cool.
I'm not 100% sure.
That's cool that you did that. At least, did you know these people, or you just?
Yep.
So it's not everybody gets that info on the way down the mountain.
Well, they probably would have seen it, or they might have saw some other ones. There's a reason that they were up in that country, and but that was a really nice boom ram. I haven't seen a lot of really those tremendous boom rams.
Yeah. They're few and far between now.
They're rare. Yeah.
What about what was I going to ask you? there's got to be the one that got away story. Is there a ram that just you think about and go, oh, I could have had him, but I didn't, or I should have had him and it didn't happen?
Not for myself, but I went in one year and took some friends of mine, and we saw some really nice rams, and we were right on top of them, and we spooked them, and they just kept running from range to range to range. And my one friend, he went one way, and I went with my other friend, and me and her, we decided to try and pursue these rams. And we went down and up, and it was all day. It was just amazing how far they would go when they're spooked.
Yeah.
And it was just kind of weird because the wind was in our favor, but hey, those things are amazing animals. So
there's those pretty powerful eyeballs there too.
And we got right close to them again. And at the end of that day, that whole day of hiking, we those rams weren't legal. None of those rams were legal. I got right close to them, and I felt so bad having to sort of, break the news that none of these are shooter rams.
Yeah.
And so she never got her first ram there, but oh boy, she got her ram. I think it was a little bit after that, and she shot a tremendous ram out of a different region. And those that know will know who she is. She's quite the sheep hunter. Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah.
Now I know there is a story or two that you've told me in this regard, but tell us about it in any of your sheep hunts that may have gotten sketchy or turned a little dangerous throughout. And I know the one you had a couple years ago, you kind of had that. I don't know if you want to share that one or not, but
sure. It's a lesson in bad decision making, I think.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah.
Tell us about that one.
We decided one year to get those ultralight kayaks.
Pack rafts, right?
Oh, yeah. Pack rafts.
Pack rafts, yeah.
And I got the lightest, smallest one because I'm an ultralight guy.
Yeah.
And which was great. It would have been a great experience, except we decided to do it decided to go in the river. We each had rams. We were coming out, and the river that we went in had a flash flood. And so that was the big wrong decision I made was, hey, I think I can kind of squeak by the edges of these wave trains. And I just got sucked right out.
So, Kev, were you floating a river?
Yeah.
Right.
Floating
so it wasn't crossing. You were trying to float a river
just
into an
floating
area.
a river back down, heavy packs, exhausted. Each of us had all of the meat for each of our rams, and the head, the capes, and all of our gear. And those rafts are great. They work, but not in a flood. They're not meant for the heavy water. And we kind of had that sort of bubble point where we floated down into an area where we kind of had to keep floating. We couldn't sort of pack everything up and go around because we were too far away from any trails or anything. And so we ended up just making the decision to keep going. And oh my gosh, like it was literally around the corner. It was like out of a movie where you come around a corner, and I got sucked into the middle of the river, right through the middle of a wave train, and completely swamped me. I actually paddled right into it because I knew not to turn sideways. But my partner...
You wanted to try to ride it out.
Yeah, I wanted to try and get through it, but you have no choice. And my partner ended up flipping. And we were so sort of in haste to get out of there. We didn't think to take our boots off, and we had our rain gear on, and because we thought we'd just drift around the outsides, and we were totally unprepared. And ended up my partner flipped and went in and he had lost his pack, his rifle, his ram, everything went scooting by me, and he was barely, he's such an athlete, but he was barely able to get to shore. And I went up to him, I just put my arm on him, and it was emotional. And
right out,
I never would thought I would see a close friend almost die.
Yeah.
And so we ended up on the wrong side of the river he lost everything, but I still had my raft.
So you didn't flip.
I didn't flip, but I swamped, but I actually ended up flipping right at shore just to bail out so that I could
get out of it.
And we ended up walking 3 kilometers downriver, just bushwhacking. And soaking wet, obviously.
What was
And
the weather doing at this point?
still piss and rain. Like it was a
Yeah.
complete flash flood it was
So
like,
you didn't have time, like you didn't stop and start a fire, try to dry out, like it wasn't, you weren't hypothermic.
no, I was actually wanting to get downriver because I thought at least we could find his pack raft.
Yeah.
And I asked him, I said, did you tie your pack to your pack raft? He said, and he tied it with a shoelace.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm like, oh, what are the odds that a shoelace will? And we ended up, I saw it way down the river. I saw a pack raft upside down in the middle of the river on sort of a shelf.
So were you just tailing your
No,
raft
we
down,
were
or
hiking through the bush.
So you took your raft out, took it down, deflated it, packed it. And
yeah,
you got your ram in your camp, but he's got nothing but what's on his body.
Yeah, we hiked for most of that whole day, and got 3 clicks downriver, but bushwhacking and up and over like really steep rock bluffs, and it was not fun. And we ended up I saw that raft upside down, and the water was all chocolate milk colored. So
yeah,
I was like, oh, at least we'll get your raft. But
we got a way out of here now.
But the river was too raging to cross anywhere, so we waited for it to come down, and went out, got his raft.
So you waited. How long was that? Sorry to keep interrupting.
No, it was
details.
It was probably about 3 hours we waited, and then my friend took my raft out there to that shelf and grabbed the pack raft, and his backpack, rifle, and ram was still attached to that raft.
Oh shit!
Yeah, it had dragged.
So you couldn't see any of this from the side. No. So all you thought was raft.
Yep, and he was pretty distraught, and because we'd worked hard for those sheep, and so we ended up staying for 2 more days on that side of the river, waiting for that water to come down so we could safely cross. We couldn't even ferry cross the river anywhere.
Did you bring his ram and stuff? Did you bring it back over?
Yeah.
So you had everything.
We couldn't get across the rapids. It was just solid rapids. Okay. And then it took a couple of days for the water to go down, and then we were able to get across and hike out of there. Yeah, it was one of the scariest moments ever of my life, and learned a lot. I made terrible mistakes. Life jackets, you just don't think on those small rivers. What
was the river like when you hit it? Did you have to go? So you went up somewhere else and floated down this river then. So you didn't encounter that river until the way out.
Exactly.
Okay, yeah, I got you. So you did a loop kind of thing and came out on it, floating out. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would try it again, but I would just be so much smarter about it and wear a life jacket. And
you're quite the mariner, right? You're a fisherman. You got that nice fishing boat, and you were a jet boat operator for a long time. But like you said, heat of the situation.
It goes down
you
fast. It happens fast. Like as soon as we came around that corner, we had no time to get back to shore whatsoever. It was you're in it.
You're done. Yeah.
We're really lucky.
Well, so those rams are special.
They are special. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a crazy story. You told me this. I didn't get all these details. I got the Coles Dope version before, but that's a crazy story.
Yeah, that's how I got all this gray hair, Chuck. Right here.
You're gonna do it, man. Wow, that's crazy. Is there any other stories that you can think of off the top of your head that you want to share? Anything that I
can't tell you all my stories. You won't invite me back.
You're coming back, dude.
I would say there was always from my river jet days, lots of boating mishaps.
All right, cool. That's a good segue because I want to talk about that. When you ran Riverjet, one of the services that you provided, I don't think it was intentional, but because you're on the river every day, but Jason does it too, and that was river rescue for other boats.
Yeah.
Right. And I think this is something that I hear a lot. I hear not a lot, but I'll hear from time to time where somebody's like, "Oh, my buddy just bought a jet boat." And it's like, okay, first time jet boat? Yeah, he lives down here. He got a deal on it. We're going out sheep hunting this year. We're going to take his boat. Like, this is cool. We've got transport. Well, that to me is great. It's nice to hear guys are doing that, but I think there's a lot more to unpack when it comes to what's needed on a jet. Like, how do you manage a jet boat river, like a river sheep hunt in northern BC? And maybe you could tell us maybe a couple stories about that. Hard lessons learned for others. Yeah. And maybe some advice on how to plan that.
Having the right tool for the job is huge. And you have to have the right jet boat for the northern rivers in BC.
Okay.
And these boats that you see down in the lower part of the province, lots of them are built in the States, and they have deeper rivers, not as rocky, and they're not built as strong, and they sit deeper in the water when they run, and they don't pack a big load like some of the northern boat builders do.
Yeah.
And so I could spot that a mile away. Guys would come with a kicker motor on the back, which is essentially useless up there, a big white cooler, and an anchor with a orange Scotchman on the front, the total Fraser River setup, the sturgeon setup. Yeah. And they said, well, we've run the Upper Pitt River, we'll be fine on Tashodi. And turns out they've run the Upper Pitt River when it's freshet and it's high water, and you could get a propeller up there.
Yeah, exactly.
Ski boat up there. Yeah. So anyway, they would go up, and I could almost call it and smash up their boats and
some bad crashes,
pretty bad wrecks. Yeah, there's been some pretty gnarly ones over the years, and I would always just be happy to give my number if you need help. Towed a lot of boats down the river, had to learn lots about that, and
that's a whole process in itself.
Yeah, figuring that out, and lots of help from the northern jet boaters are a special breed.
It is
the local boys, the Fort Nelson boys. They're awesome. Yeah, they're up there, and they're the ones that typically get called to help. So I learned a lot from those guys.
Well, you were the new kid on the block with a jet boat when you got up there with Riverjet, right? Like that must have been quite an experience too, right?
Yeah, it was. It was intimidating, and met some good people along the way, and that was key. And always respected them and kind of their areas and where they go. And it was always hard just not living there full time, but you're still from the south, but like they after a while they realized this guy's got his shit together, and he's on the river every day. Think I was
you got a lot of friends up there now.
I have a ton of friends. Some real special people that were really helpful and just awesome people. Yeah,
it's interesting. This is a bit of a rabbit hole, but I know when you were talking about selling the operation, it took years for you not just to get it sold. You weren't worried about that. You were concerned about who was buying it.
Yeah.
That was your biggest thing.
Right? Yeah. When I let go of that, it was I built it up to something I thought was pretty big and pretty special, and I was really picky about who was going to buy it, and I had a number of outfitters reach out to me, and I was less inclined to sell it to them because I felt that residents wouldn't have access to those areas. Yeah. And
look at it today. That's the only jet boat transporter in British Columbia.
Yeah.
And that license is there, and Jason provides the same service you do. And, he's one of those.
He stalked me into Tim Hortons actually in Fort St. John. That's how I met him.
It's kind of how you bought it too, wasn't it? At a bar, sheep show.
At a sheep show. Yeah, that's maybe a story for another time. But the gentleman that bought it, him and his family, they're awesome people. They are. Salt of the earth people, hard workers, and really believes in resident access and protecting our sheep numbers too. That's a big thing. And
no, he's awesome. We there a lot of people, like most people that had transported with you were pretty upset when you sold the business because they didn't know who was going to buy it and what was going to happen with it. But Jason and Francis have done just a great job. Their customer service is good and awesome, and they're, like you said, great people. They
hell of a jet boat driver too.
Oh man, he is. Well, he's into the jet boat racing a little bit too.
He is. Right? He is the world champion. They won the worlds this year. Jason and his partner.
Yeah. Well, if you've ever ridden with him up those skinny rivers, you feel like you're in the jet boat race too. But no, that's awesome. How are we doing for time there, bud?
Pretty good. We've got about 18 minutes till we time out, so we probably are heading towards the close here.
Okay.
One quick question from Brecken: what jet boat brands do you recommend?
For hunting for sheep in northern rivers, I recommend any brand that can build a shallow running boat that has enough power and is built strong. So, I mean, there's quite a few now, but the ones that are popular right now are the Firefish boats, the Outlaw boats, the Alleycraft boats. There's a few smaller builders that are coming around now that they build. Those are sort of the bigger ones, but there's lots of small sort of builders that build great boats for the North. But to bring a Thunderjet or a Custom Weld or a North River up there are guys that do it and get away with it, and it's great. And they're great drivers. You also got to know the river and know your limits. Don't try and cram your boat up a little creek that's infested with rocks and something's going to happen, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
So, I don't have one favorite brand. I ran a brand called Riddle Marine from the States, but I worked with them to custom build something that hadn't really been done in the way that I did it in the North. So I liked those guys because they built something exactly like I wanted. I wanted slow. I didn't want anything to go fast. I wanted to take a big load, you know, a lot of weight, and go really slow and just safe and putt along the river. And it was fuel efficient too. So,
Cool. Yeah, there was that. I was about to ask a question regarding other boats. Anthony asked a question. Blake, you can read that one out, and then we'll jump back to Clay's after.
Sure. Yeah, Anthony was just asking, what are your thoughts on the new inflatable jet boats?
Yeah, I've got friends that use those.
The Solars.
And I forget the other one right now, but they are great. They run shallow. The one problem you run into those, if you're doing really long extended trips, you have to take so much fuel that it adds so much weight, you run into diminishing returns. So you're just piling in the weight, which makes you use way more fuel. But for the closer areas, great. Yeah, they're cool little units. They're
neat.
Along.
And you gotta look at the ratio from horsepower at the motor versus horsepower at the jet, right? Because it's a significant decrease. And a lot of guys use them for moose hunts. I know a few guys that have come back from a moose hunt and found it eaten by a bear, which is a bit of a problem. Right?
It happened on a stone sheep hunt last year. Actually, guy came back and his boat had been chewed on.
That's one big risk. Not something you can hang in a tree like a packraft or something.
Yeah.
Okay, Blake, you can fire away.
Clay wants to know, what's your boot of choice, and do you use walking sticks?
Right now, I like the Peak Refuel Meals.
Boot.
Oh, boot of choice. I thought it was boot of choice.
Yeah,
boot of choice is, I reached out to the guys at Lathrop and Sons, and they got me going on one of their boots. It's a Hanwag GTX, blah, 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 full rand. It's been good. I usually would go through a pair every year and a half.
In the Riverjet days.
Because I was hiking so much in that sheep country. Now I've slowed down a lot, so they last a bit longer. But all of those boots, there's so many, the Zamberlands, there's so many good boots now. I know it's like your favorite brand of car, you know, it's everybody's got
Ford,
one.
GM, Dodge kind of thing.
Just pick something that's
fits your feet,
comfortable, full rand.
But trekking poles.
Yeah, so I used to call those training wheels back when they first showed up. But I actually use trekking poles now, and I just find for going downhill, it just helps me. So yeah, I'm 100% a believer in trekking poles now.
Yeah, me too. Man, game changer. And
Kevin, we got one from Brecken as well. He was just following up on the jet boat thing. So what's the best way to learn a river? He was asking, should you take a ride with somebody else up for the first year, or like, how do you learn a river?
I found not to go. I think seat time is huge. You knowing your boat, what its capabilities are, and go slow. Don't just keep going and get behind in your moves. Just go slow. If things get hairy and there's a deeper pool, just stop and then reset and go again. And I think you don't learn as much following another boat. going as a passenger, sure, that's learning the lines. You can see the water ahead of time, but driving your own boat, just take it slow and, make sure the water's not too low and the sun's not in your eyes. And there's all sorts of little things, but definitely you spending as much time in your own boat and knowing how tight of a turn you can get in shallow water is huge with a load, because lots of guys would spin out on the turns because they're going too fast. That was one of the biggest things. Guys go way too fast. Yeah.
They're trying to hit that balance of power and speed and running the river, and all of a sudden they push it too far, and it's
I could always tell guys would be on the throttle. I call them throttle jockeys, on and off, and like full throttle and nothing, and full throttle nothing. And I always the guys that I would just set my throttle to an RPM and just slowly putt up the river and not touch my throttle unless I needed to. So
cool. We got time for two more.
Yeah, okay. We can work them into
quick, and then we're gonna have to. Yeah, we'll have to jump.
All right. So Kevin was asking, Kevin McCollum, did you find that rams were consistently in the same areas? We saw rams last year and aged a few at 7, and one was close to full curl. Are the odds good they will be in the same range, or how far does one group move during the summer?
My experience, Kevin, was that rams were consistently in the same areas. Yeah, pretty close. Yeah. There, you can go up there and find ram herds in the same mountain side every year. Yeah, they don't, and if they're not there, they're reasonably close. I found within reason. They're not going to be 25 miles away. They seem to just like those same areas, creatures of habit, I guess.
Yeah, cool. And Clay had just a comment here that he has a buddy that would haul his solar up the river on his jet boat and then to the upper camp. So he kind of had that secondary boat to get in skinnier water, which
that's awesome.
It's a good idea. That saves a lot of fuel if you can pack that on, if you got the right boat.
I know a couple guys that did that very recently. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, I got one question for you.
Okay.
And I probably asked you this before, but and I know you spoke to it a little bit throughout the interview, but what's your thoughts on conservation and how we as sheep hunters should look at conservation in BC?
Well, my biggest thing is get involved. Join the Wild Sheep Society. Put yourself out there. Plug yourself into that whole community. It's a great community. Those guys are raising money for sheep on the mountain, to put sheep on the mountain. It definitely will. If those guys are successful, the more successful they are, the more sheep we're going to have. And we want to be fighting not over every last sheep. We want to be, we want to be united together to keep this sport alive. And so join the clubs. Make sure you're shooting older rams if you can. The older rams
that I think we have to focus.
Yeah, really, you want to be not shooting a 5-year-old ram that's 1/8 of an inch over the tip of the horns. If it's be willing to walk away. If you don't see those rams and you see a bubble ram, just walk away and come back the next year and keep trying. And don't be focused on the harvest, focused on the process.
Yeah.
And
that's what you're there for.
Yeah. And the fun of it.
Well said, my friend. All right, cool. Let's jump to the fun stuff now, the real fun stuff. We got some shit to give away, Blake. So you want to spin the wheel and give away that Aussie setup?
Yeah, so maybe let everyone know if someone's going to win, and I'll pull it up right now.
Okay, so it's a Aussie backcountry light carbon fiber tripod with their backcountry light head, which is an ultralight head, and then there is the bino clamp setup as well. And Rydell sent me, I think, 2 or 3 sizes of clamp because there's a chart for your bino. So what we'll do is once the winner is drawn, I'll be in touch with you, and you need to go on that website, on Rydell's site, and figure out which size you want. And we'll either, if we have it, we'll give this one to you and ship it, or we'll get one sent to you. So that's prize number 1.
Okay, so I just drew the number. I've got a list of everyone that registered. There was a couple that had some bonus entries for sharing it on social, but long story short, we got 179 numbers. I just drew 138. So Shelton Medeiros has won that kit. So Shelton, I got your name and email. I'll reach out to you and we'll get that sorted out.
Okay. And the next one is the bonus giveaway from Alec at Ape Equipment is giving away a set of his Silverback Ultra Gators. Those are the custom fit ones. Just a note on that, Alec is going to be a partner with us on Spike Camp for the rewards program going forward, and he's going to be donating Gators on a regular basis. So if you don't win tonight, you may have chances downrange. You will have chances downrange. And he's throwing in a hat. He's got some really cool hats as well. So Alec's a great guy. He's a big-time hunter, local BC guy. So who's winning those?
I just drew a number. I've got number 70. Let me see who we got. It's James Kotai. So, right. Nice. Congrats, James. I'll message you as well. We're rolling here. Yep.
And then we'll connect you with Alec and you can get your sizes up. So that's the giveaways for Sheep Camp. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. This has been a fun series. It's got everybody just itching to hit the mountain for opener and beyond. So good luck, everyone. Be safe. I just want to remind everybody we are running a custom rifle giveaway right now for conservation. The details are on the platform. There's 2 ways to get entries. This is a custom rifle, 7 PRC, custom built by Mitch Kendall, put together by our buddy Don Lynham. We've got a $6,000 value on this rifle setup. Option 1 to win this, to get your name in the hat for the draw, go to the Wild Sheep Society of BC, like Kevin said, or Wild Sheep Alberta, or the Goat Alliance website, buy a membership, upgrade a membership, buy one for someone else, or just simply make a cash donation. This is the key part you got to hear. Every dollar you spend at any of those groups in membership or donations, you got 2 entries for the draw for every dollar. We want to raise some money for conservation. Let's get after it, you guys. Get out there. You got to know somebody who's a cheapskate that needs a membership. $55 or whatever it is. It's 110 entries. So buy someone a membership.
If I could jump in for a second, if you donate $50 or more, the odds currently are incredible for your chances of winning this gun. So there's been a few people that have done that, and I think in terms of the number of entries they have, like they immediately get into the top 20 regardless of how many engagement points they have. So it's a very good way. Like your odds are going to be pretty solid if you're willing to renew your membership or buy somebody a membership or even just donate cash. So definitely consider it if you're looking to do something like that.
And then the option 2 obviously is the engagement in the rewards program. Blake's got the details on the platform. Find it there. So let's get out there. Let's raise some money for conservation, everybody. And thanks a lot for the members tonight. I think we had over 50 people in the chat room tonight. That's really cool. Thank you all very much for the support. It's always good to get our buddy Kev on here for chats. We're going to try and do it more than once a year. And be safe on the mountain and make good decisions before you click that safety off. So good luck in sheep season, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.